very pleasant good evening to one and all. It's my immense pleasure to welcome you all for this webinar on Introduction to Machine Learning. First of all, I thank our God Almighty for giving me this opportunity. Prayer is the key to success. Now I invite Professor Mrs. M. Sharon Nisha, Computer Science and Engineering Department, to lead us in prayer.
Prayer. Dear loving Heavenly Father, we thank you for the wonderful day you have given us, Lord. Before the start of this webinar, we are all gathered in your mighty feet for your blessings, guidance, and support. Lord, enrich the resource person with your knowledge so that she will use her potentials fully, Lord. We also pray for the participants, help them to make use of this webinar effectively. Finally, Lord, we pray for all the people who are supportive to conduct this web program. Bless us and guide us. In the name of Jesus Christ, we pray. Amen.
Thank you, ma'am. First of all, it's my immense pleasure to thank our management for providing all the motivation and for all the support in conducting this webinar. Also, it's my immense pleasure to welcome and thank Dr. K. Jayakumar, the General Manager for Development, and for all the support and motivation he has provided in conducting this webinar. Also, it's my immense pleasure to welcome Dr. V. Velmurugan, the Principal of Francis Xavier Engineering College. Also, it's my immense pleasure to welcome Professor P. Brinda, the Head of the Department of Computer Science and Engineering Department, for her support in conducting all these webinars in a successful manner. Also, it's my immense pleasure to welcome the resource person of this day, Mrs. Mabel Finney, Director of Infoscient IT Solutions, Chennai, for this August gathering. She is having 17 years of professional experience in IT industry involving architecting, design, development, testing and documentation. She is proficient in machine learning and deep learning algorithms. It's my high privilege for us to have you as the resource person. Now over to the resource person.
Vanakkam. I am Mabel Finney. I'm so happy to be here to present to you, to share what I know about machine learning to you in this short webinar. And I thank Dr. Gomadi, a very good friend of mine, who has given me this opportunity to share and to take this webinar on machine learning. So this is new to me. I've never done this before, so I'm very happy to do this. I think she has introduced me well. So apart from that, I did my UG long ago, and I did my PG recently because when I wanted to come back to India and work with young minds, I thought I should equip myself much more better in a better way. So I did my PG late, and here I am as a director of Infoscient IT Solution, a software engineering service company based off of Chennai. So let's get into our real topic, machine learning. Okay. So as a topic, machine learning is a fancy word these days. Everyone is talking about machine learning. Any computer science engineering graduate or engineering students, if you talk, machine learning is a hot topic these days. And what's the boom about it? Why do you think machine learning has become more popular? Before we get into it, because it helps in using or developing applications so quick, so fast with an existing data. Let's get into what actually machine learning is. To begin with, initially it was artificial intelligence that was very popular, and machine learning is part of it. When we talk about artificial intelligence, what does it mean? It is a way that how we are going to give the intelligence artificially to a computer. Humans have intelligence naturally, and the artificial intelligence is how the brain, how a brain thinks or how a brain works. Understanding that that and infusing that to the computer is called artificial intelligence. So machine learning is something very similar, but we are trying to use some statistical method. Artificial intelligence is more of coding, like how the logic works. I'm using some if-then rules, or and of course machine learning as a part of it. But machine learning purely depends on statistical uh, statistical techniques because it relies on the data. Why data has taken a big growth these days? Yes, we are in the big data era. Every second, for example, if it was not corona, you all will be in a live classroom, and assume you all will have definitely have some mobile phones with you. And if assume your class strength is 60, uh, less the class teacher or the lecturer whoever is handling the class, on 61 mobile phones will be sending the GPS location, the current tower location, many data from your mobile phone to wherever the data is being sent every second or periodically, and the data quantity of data is just not kilobytes or megabytes, it's humongous. So that's where the big data era has come. So when we have so much data, what else can we do with this data? That's where machine learning got a birth, and it's a new evolution that has come, that what all can be done with the data that we have. Sometimes we don't even care about these data, but there are a lot more that we can do with that data. I'll give you a small illustration, or a real-time example. For example, I do grocery shopping every week, and there are something that I buy weekly once, and there are some things that I buy monthly once. For example, rice and other groceries, like dry rations, like rice, dal, and all that, oil could be purchased monthly once. But the vegetables and fruits, I would do it weekly once. So assume that I have a very known store that I go very often. I go every week there to purchase things, and every week I get a bill that's getting generated. So assume you have all the bills that I have purchased for the past 2 years. Now you can develop a pattern, like every week Saturday, uh, Mrs. Mabel is going to go to that shop and buy tomatoes, onions, bananas, of course some coriander or mint leaves, green chili, ginger. All these are going to be my every week staples. So you don't have to wait for me to go to the shop to do the job again. Next Saturday, you can automatically bill this. You know my quantity from my previous bills, and you can automatically bill them and send it to me. So that is how machine learning works. So you have humongous data. You have a data that about my shopping trends and what I shop for, how much do I shop, the quantity, everything you had in the data as data. So that humongous data, you now know how to break it down and use it for your convenience. And what is my convenience? Predicting what will Mrs. Mabel buy every week. So that kind of prediction is being done using machine learning. So machine learning is nothing but it's also a subset of AI. What you should always understand is machine learning is AI. The only thing is that artificial intelligence, AI is a bigger umbrella. Machine learning is a part of it, where it uses statistical methodologies to get artificial intelligence to the computer. So what does it use? It uses statistical techniques to enable machines to improve their task. And deep learning is a subset of machine learning. So now I think you'll get a bigger picture. So how deep learning is different? Deep learning uses some lot of complex algorithm that helps the software to train itself, and and do very complex tasks, like speech and image recognition, because it uses layers of neural networks on it. To be in a precise form, deep learning is more of like mimicking the brain. How does the brain work? There are a lot of neurons in the brain, and the neurons communicate with each one of them. They send signals, and that's how they work. So we try to mimic the brain, like how neurons communicate with each other in our brain. We try to build some neural networks, layers of neural networks, to handle these vast amount of data. So that is deep learning. Machine learning is a superset of deep learning, and AI is the big umbrella where machine learning is a part of it. So I think now you guys are pretty clear of the terminologies of what artificial intelligence is, machine learning is, and deep learning is. Now I'm going to focus here on what the machine learning part alone. You know what machine learning is, what are the basic algorithms, what is all that there can that we can do with machine learning. Okay, so machine learning, what is it? The word itself is very clear. In English, sometimes the complex terminologies will be very easy once you break it out. Similarly, break the words machine learning. Now, what is machine? Any computer, anything that can be automated is called a machine, or that can help you reduce your work is called a machine. So, what is learning? Learning happens with experience, right? You read something, you understand something, and you know what to do next based off of it, or you use that experience or you apply that somewhere. So that is called learning. So machine learning is nothing but giving this experience or giving this learning experience to the computer or making the machine to learn something. So how are we going to do it? We are natural learners. Humans are natural learners right from our birth. We learn to crawl, we learn to talk, we learn to walk, we learn to do a lot of things um, in our life. So how we're doing it? How we're doing it in real time is basically let's take a simple place where a mother teaches the little baby to walk. The mother holds the hands of the baby and she tries to walk with the baby. So you see a small stone, and the mom immediately wants the baby saying, dear, please don't step on the stone, you might fall." The baby would right away listen to the mom because it trusts the mom. So it will immediately try not to step on the stone but try to walk around it. So next time, immediately when a stone comes, the mom need not give the same instruction. The baby by now it's learned. Okay, mom has told me not to step on it, so I learn. Or another kind of learning is a baby is trying to walk, it sees a stone, and 90% of the babies are curious enough to know what it is. So they will try to step on it and they'll fall down. Once they fall down, they'll get on it and know, okay, this is something different. You cannot step on it. If you step on it, I'm going to fall. So next time, it's going to go to it and see a stone again. It will make sure it doesn't step on it because it knows that if it step on it, it will fall because of its past experience. So learning is mainly experience. Either it is experience that through our listening or someone teaching us, or it is an experience by we practically getting a hands-on on it. So this kind of learning humans get. We see, we observe, someone tells it, we have lot of exposure. But how does machine get this kind of learning? How do we get it? Because machine are known to work with instructions. Like if you program a machine to do something, it will do something. But how are you going to make it learn? How do we, what is that? We have experience. How are we going to give the machine that experience? So machine experience for humans are nothing but how can we mimic the experience to the machine is like any experience to humans is nothing but the data to machine. So that's why I was telling them my 2-year shopping record or my 2-year bills, grocery bills. Those are nothing but it's an experience for me. Every week I'll be going, that's experience for me. But if you feed to a computer, that's nothing but the data. So you should know, like, where machines work with instructions, humans may work based on their experience. And what is experience to machine now? It's nothing but the data. So now we're going to go to that, regular book definition that's been given for machine learning. Machine learning is programming computers to optimize a performance criterion using example data or past experience. So how do we let the how are we going to program computers? We're going to give the sample data. Sample data is nothing but the past experience to the computer. And what are we going to do it? We're going to help the computer to optimize the performance criteria. Like, it is going to learn the data, and it is going to help you understand what is going on with the data and what can we bring, what is the best that can come out of those data. That is machine learning. So basically, all this data in the digital world is equal to any experience that humans have. Once we feed this to the computer, and when you say data, there are humongous amount of data going around. For example, we saw the classroom place where we have 60 to 70 mobiles in one classroom that's sending data every second, every millisecond. So where will a human role come if your computers are going to do that? That is exactly where we come, how we are going to refine the data. Like, data, we call, some people call as data analysts, data scientists. So what do? They know the zillion bytes of data that is out in the world. So what do? They take the data and refine. Okay, these are the data that the computer might need. These are the data that might not need. For example, let's take the case where um, I have a smartwatch. So my smartwatch is tracking the number of steps I walk, the exercise that I do, all my movements are getting tracked. Apart from that, it tracks all the other messages that comes to my mobile phone also. So what happens, like, all this data is getting stored somewhere. So if my application or if my problem to be solved is to develop a weight loss application for weight loss, the data that I would be interested is to know my activity, like, how many steps or how many water I'm drinking, what is the food intake I'm doing, how much active I am, how much sedate I am, or is my house, my lifestyle, is it active or is it very much, I'm a couch potato, something like that. All those data is what you would need it. You will not want to know what are all the online shopping I do, what are the sites I visit to do online shopping, or where do I do a lot of expenditure. That is would not be my area of interest for this particular problem. So that's exactly where the data scientists come into picture. They they remove the unwanted data and give the essential needed data only to the computer so that it can use the data that it's being fed to it. It doesn't have to worry about handling humongous data, but rather take the data only that is needed. So this is where data scientists come into picture handling. So basically, to be in one liner, how do you say machine learning is? It's basically nothing but automating and automation. So already we know machines are nothing but machines automate our life, right? In many ways, we automate our life. Many things are automated these days by using machines. But then what machine learning does it extra? Machine learning is going to automate the automations. So what it does, how can I automatically have a program to do this, do the programming? So those kind of automating the automation is happening through machine learning. So, like, I would like to say a scenario where initially when computers were discovered or invented, sorry, discovered is the wrong word. So when computers were invented, like, people were really scared. Oh my God, these computers are going to take away all the jobs of the people, and we might end up being jobless. So they were really scared, and people had a negative thought about computers when it first came into practice. But is it true? Did it take away all the jobs? No. It gave new opportunities and new jobs that is developed. So similarly, machine learning is a new trend that's coming up. That, when you say the computers are going to program themselves, oh my God, will all the programmers lose the job? No, it is still going to open new avenues where a lot of domain experts will be needed, or a lot of people to understand the data better is going to need. A lot of people who can identify the problems and feed the right data to the computer will be needed. And where is machine learning more popular now? Today, those days when it is an IT project, they used to say my project is 2 years old, 3 years old. Like, old, if you all might have come across software engineering and the waterfall method of developing a software. You get the requirements, you then document it, and then you get approval, then you design it, then you get an approval, then you go develop it. These days we don't have time. We are into an agile methodology, so we don't have time to do all those one by one after the thing, and we don't have time to write humongous code and compile it, run it, execute it. The writing software and maintaining them is becoming a very big bottleneck. So that's where machine learning has come very, very handy to it. How machine learning has become handy? Machine learning has um, it has started to reduce the amount of time that you spend on writing a code, because these days you have wonderful uh, packages, or RStudio, like, environment has given you wonderful libraries that is tremendously reduce the effort of coding. Rather, it is going to operate on humongous data. You've got computers that can operate on big data. So you can, once you have huge data, you have a computer that is capable enough of working on that data, and you have a easily and coding is becoming so easy with the languages like Python. So with that, with those this help of these tools, writing software is no more a bottleneck. You don't have to wait for 1 year or 2 year for an application to come out, and we don't have this time in this fast pace. We need an application just now. So to overcome all these, machine learning is kind of a solution work. So again, optimize the performance criteria. Just as we saw in the definition, it is basically understanding the data better and then predicting or finding what would fit the real-time data. That's exactly is what's going to happen, and you'll understand that part really better as we get into the as we go to the further slides. So what is the role of computer science here? Computer science has come into a big role in machine learning because it can develop efficient algorithms to solve this problem. And also, we can come up with efficient algorithms to represent and evaluate the existing data so that the program that the machine learning is going to give you is going to be much efficient. So we're going to go and I'm going to do a quick differentiation between the traditional programming that we have been doing, like, write a program to add two integers. So you first get the data, you will get the value of x and you'll get the value of y, and then you'll write a statement to add those value, and then you'll print the output for saying, a is equal to x plus y. So this is your traditional programming. So what does it have? You have a computer. Yes, you have a computer. You give the data. X and Y are the data that you give. And you also give the program to say that, you will get two data, X and Y. And then the program has to take that X and Y and add it, and then you get the output. How is machine learning different? In machine learning too, you're going to have a computer and you're going to give the data. But instead of giving a program, you give the output of the data that you have given. For example, if you say the same addition program, I'm going to give a humongous amount of data. I'm going to give 5 and 2 as one data as input, and my output that I'm giving to the computer would be 7. And then I would give 1, 1 and saying 2 is the output. And I will say 3, 2 and I will give 5 is the output. So my computer will understand this data, and then it will come to a picture. Oh, okay, with the pattern I see with the pattern that I see with this data, I understand that they are adding the given data and they are giving the result. So what does it do? What does the output of a machine learning program is nothing but the output is nothing but another program that is now ready to accept data, and it will give you the expected output based off of what it has learned within past data and the corresponding output. So I think now we have understood what machine learning could be in a nutshell. It is not a magical word anymore. It is not a fancy word that you don't have to worry about. Oh my God, what is that machine learning one? Everyone are using it. It's a very normal word. It is not a magic word. So you can easily compare it with gardening. What do you do when you want to do a garden, or when you want to plant a nice, for example, you want to plant a tomato plant? What will you do? You'll first clean up a small space, and then you will dig up, put some tomato seeds. You will fill back the soil. You will put fertilizers, water it every day, and then what you will see the plant grow on itself, and then the plant will be on its own, it will give its own fruit, and the life cycle goes on. So very similarly, here your algorithms that you're going to use are nothing but the seeds. You pick and choose the right algorithms, and nutrients are nothing but the data, the fertilizer or the watering, or how you take care, or what are the input that you have to give for the plant to grow is nothing but the data. Once you give the data, who is the gardener? It's you, because you are the one who's deciding what data has to go into the algorithm, or what data should the algorithm use. It's decided by you, the gardener. And so what is a plant that grows are nothing but the programs. The programs, once you grow, you automatically get tomatoes. So this is all on an action. It's nothing but like you are helping the computers to develop their own programs. How are you going to help the computers? Give their necessary data and the behavior that happened with the data in the past. Based off of that, the computer is going to come up with its own programs. So this is now machine learning. So we're going to move on to the next section, which is going to talk about, um, what are the types of machine learning and all that. So going forward, before that, I would like just quickly give on the sample applications. I've just listed only very few that came into my mind. Web search is one real time thing that we use where machine learning is often used. Like, you type in machine learning, it gives suggestions here. Google search will automatically give some suggestions in a Dropbox. So how does it happen? It is based on your previous searches and your profile preferences. So computational biology is very important, where you're going to understand the trends of the DNA, and you're going to predict, or you can predict any genetical diseases that will come for the baby. How does it happen? All those prediction happens using machine learning and computational biology. Finance, of course, you can predict the trends of the finance and all the trades that is going to happen. E-commerce, space exploration, robotics, information extraction, social network debugging, or all these are all sample applications where these can be used. Apart from that, you yourself can pick any domain. Once you think there is some enough data that I can do something in this particular area, then you yourself can come up with. There are so many areas that uh, you will really feel excited to see where you can use machine learning. Because, for example, let's see, you are in a classroom. You can develop your own algorithm to statistically say the trend of a student from first year to final year. What his percentage will be based off his focus and his marks on his first year. How will he predict it? You will collect all his unit test and cycle test mark, and then you'll come up with a cumulative average, and then you'll project it. So similarly, or anywhere that you have enough data, any domain, so you can add any of it. Like, for example, these days, Netflix and accounts like Netflix, which has become popular during this corona time, you how do they suggest movies for us, or how do they suggest any programs for us based on our preferences, or based on our the previous movies that we watched in Netflix? That gives them an idea what kind of movies do we like, and what does it do? Um, it immediately suggests based on it. So these are all areas where machine learning can come in handy. So machine learning in a nutshell is nothing but, um, we have seen machine learning in a nutshell, and there are a lot of already there are a lot of tens of thousands of machine learning algorithms are there. Every year we get new algorithms. That doesn't mean that that is completely done. No, you can develop your own algorithm. Once, you don't have to use any existing algorithm, because your problem might be unique, and you might need a merge of two or three algorithms, which you can do all by yourself. But every machine learning algorithm has to have three components. One is representation. What is representation? How are you going to represent your data? What kind of data are you going to use? And what data is going to be used for what? So you should know what data you're going to use. That is representing the data. Evaluating data is basically understanding what the data does. Like, for example, a couple of those data would be an input data, and a couple of them will be an output data. So if this is the input, this is the output, and you evaluate them, or you analyze them and come out what relationship is happening between the input and the output, and then you understand that evaluation. Once you've done that, you optimize it. How do you optimize it? You run through several data through it. You just don't decide it on one or two data, but you run through several gigabytes of data. Make sure your model that you have developed to evaluate the data is come up very accurate, or improve the accuracy of the data. And once you're done that, your algorithm is ready to accept your real-time data. So where are the areas that machine learning are mainly done apart from your application? Machine learning is used for three important things. One is to predict. For example, we just saw, right, what will the boy in the first year, what will be his predicted percentage in his final year? That is prediction. Second is classification. Like, I'm showing a picture of a mouse, or this is a picture of my hand. I'm showing a picture, and you have to classify it if this is a hand or not, or understanding the picture and saying putting it into one category. It's a part of a human body. No, it is not a part of a human body. So that is classification. Third main usage is nothing but clustering. So what does clustering mean is, you have the grouping the data of some similarity. You can choose anything that is of your interest and similarity. For example, I want to categorize or I want to make a special group where kids are very much interested in mathematics. I want to group them together. So there, my area of interest would be to mathematics. So I would find people who are all interested in mathematics, and then I will group those people together, and the rest of them in a different grade. So clustering is one area where machine learning is highly used. Um, this is all about machine learning, and now we're going to go to the next section about types of learning. Basically, some authors say there are two types, three types, but broadly, I would say the major classifications of machine learning, and we would focus on supervised learning, which is a basic part of machine learning, and I will take it from there. So, what is supervised learning? Supervised learning is the how effects of classroom before COVID-19. What were you doing? You used to sit in the classroom. Uh, you would to you would be sitting in the classroom, and um, you would basically a lecturer would come. He or she would take class. He would be there to monitor how you behave in the class or how you sit in the class. Are you really taking notes or not? All this, your supervisor will be there right in the classroom. Sorry. So this is nothing but the supervised learning. Uh, we start that. Once we get into what each type of learning is, we'll get into the algorithms, and I'll tell you, machine learning has got a unique way in which every algorithm is some of one of the other related to any mathematics that you would have studied in your 11th or 12th grade. So it is very much closely related to maths because it is going to work with data. It is basically statistics on data, and it is going to work with different terms like different mathematical techniques that you would have definitely. So that's how my machine learning got my interest. I'm very much interested in machine learning because I I love maths, and that's how I got interested to it. So and at this webinar, and basically this is not a complete book cover for you in machine learning, but this is going to give you an overall Hawkeye view of what machine learning is. It's going to, if you're worried about, what is this machine learning, or like what can I do? This is going to give you a very good introduction. Now, after this webinar, if you go and start reading books on machine learning, you will understand it definitely better than what you were before. So, my aim of this is to give you a strong basic foundation on what machine learning is, and you will be obviously able to build on top of it. So, where were we again? We were just starting into types of machine learning. So the first one is supervised learning. So what is supervised learning? Supervised learning is nothing but like your classrooms that were before this COVID-19. Where your classrooms you used to go gather in a room. A supervisor will come. Your lecturer will come. He or he will take the class, or he will be there to monitor what you do. Every time he would say, no, that is not right. When you talk and when you do your clarification, you say, no, that is not right. This is wrong. This is right. So this is exactly what supervised learning is like. When we saw an example of addition, right? The training data, the data that we give, has a set of output for the input. For example, a complete record is like it has input, data, and the corresponding output. What was the input and what was the output? If you say in my grocery shopping, you have the list of items that I was bought and for what money did I get that. So both you have. You have the input and the output. It's a complete data. So based off of you can understand what went on. This was given and this was happening. So if you have, for example, 1 and 1 is there and 2 has come as the output. So, or for example, 2 and 2 is the input and you have 4 as the output. So you might still think whether they have multiplied it or they have added it. You're not sure. So then there are so much data that is similar to it. There is 3 and 2 and 5. There is 5 and 2 and there is 7. Okay, when you have series of data coming on similar pattern, then you will understand, okay, this 2 and 2 was basically added and not multiplied, because 5 and 2 is 7 only when it is added. So all this kind of input and output, is in the training data. That kind of data, that kind of learnings, learning with the data that is complete with an input and output is called supervised learning. The next category obviously is unsupervised learning. This is COVID special classes. You guys all are so much used to online classes these days, where you log into a place, supervisor is on his own, and it's up to you to understand or not. So similarly, here unsupervised learning mainly happens in cases where the training data is not complete. You just have the input. You just have a series of input and you don't have the desired outputs for those data. So this is basically unsupervised learning. Okay, third one is semi-supervised. And I'll say this, unsupervised learning is mainly used in clustering applications. This prediction and classification, most of the algorithms these days, they use supervised, and all of this clustered in applications. So the clustering data mainly happens in unsupervised learning, because that's when you do not know what the output is, but you find similarity between data and group them together. So there is one other called semi-supervised, wherein the training data, some of the training data are complete. You have some training data with the desired outputs, and some of them are incomplete without the output. So, but this is not a very popular kind of learning, because when you have some data like that, either they eliminate all the data without the output and put them into the supervised category, or they remove everything with the output and put them into an unsupervised. This is not a very popular kind of machine learning technique, but just for you to know, I'm just letting you know. Then is the reinforcement learning. What is reinforcement? You are giving an emphasis for some particular thing. So that is reinforcement. So how does it happen is, you give a data, you see the output, and based off an output, you get a feedback for that. Okay, this is wrong. This is not right. Like for example, I'm showing this mouse. I'm telling you, and your problem statement is to identify a mouse. I'm going to give you this a mouse, and you're identifying this as a remote. And I'm saying, no, this is a mouse. And then, okay, now someone has assured you saying that this is a mouse. Now what you'll do, you'll try to understand the features. Okay, probably here is a button, here is a scroll wheel, and here is another button. And it is kind of in a shape of like, a small rat. Okay, so this is a mouse. So next time when I show a mouse, or next time when I show some other book or something, you'll be clearly able to classify it, saying, no, this is not a mouse, or yes, this is a mouse. So this kind of, a data where a feedback can happen, or you learn, or a reward for a sequence of actions. When you do something, there is someone who intervening and saying, yes, this is right, this is wrong. That kind of rewarding that happens in this reinforcement learning. The next is deep learning, which we talked about, where exactly how neurons communicate in brain. You try to develop neural networks, layers of neural networks, or we call it as artificial or the convolutional neural networks, and you work data and you do the processing using them. Then it is nothing but reinforcement deep learning. So what happens? Deep learning is AI and ANN. So in this ANN, artificial neural networks, if they have a feedback, and then they run the same process using the result of feedback, then that is called reinforcement deep learning. Okay, so these are basic types of learning, and we are going to, I would teach you supervised and unsupervised little more elaborately, and I will dive deep into the different algorithms under. We are not going to see all the algorithms, there are so much, but I will give you, we'll get a look of the popular algorithms under supervised learning. Okay, so the first one is, what is machine learning? Here with the machine learning structure, you wanted to predict something, or basically, for example, you wanted to predict what my level of what would be my grocery expenditure would be after 10 months. So for that, you will have a lot of inputs, right? Like, you're going to get all this training data, no? Right? Training text, it could be a document, it could be some bill, it could be an image, it could be a sound, it could be a video, whatever it is, any sort of input, it could get that. Sometimes I would give you a real bill, I would give you a photo of a bill, or I would give a video of a bill, anything could it be. So out of that, what are you going to take? You are going to get the grocery items alone. You're going to pick the grocery items. That is called the features and the vectors that you're going to extract from the data. So you're going to decide what. So here my area of interest is to predict how much will be my grocery expenditure by the end of 10 months. So I'm going to pick what are the grocery items that I've bought in any kind of bill that I'm going to give you. So I'm going to extract all the grocery items and the corresponding value for that. So that is something that I will extract. And then what are these labels? Basically, labels are used when to classify in classification case. Okay, to say like these are the particular exact output. So these is the bill. This is the amount of the grocery items that I bought, and this would be the actual value of them. So once I give all this to my algorithm will now pick up all the grocery items along with their bill amount, and then it will have a cumulative idea of what is my actual, what is my trend going on. So based on this, if every time, like um, uh, for take in another case, like we'll see this example under one of the types of supervised learning, where we predict the value of a house. Like you will give the data for you'll have a lot of data about a particular house, but then you will take only the features that you would definitely pick to estimate the value of a house. Like how big the house is, the locality of the house, the how new is the building how new is the building, or what are the interiors used in the building, and those kind of features is what you will extract, and you will have the current value of the price or the actual value of the price. That's the label, that is the corresponding output for that input. So those are given to the machine learning algorithm, and it is now related. Okay, if the feature is like this, they have extracted square feet. So some 1,000 square feet house will be an input, some 5,000 square feet house will be an input, some 10,000 square feet house will be an input. So based on that, it will come to an alter. So if the square feet is this much would be the price. So it will get into some correlation between those two. So based upon that, it will now say, okay, I'm ready. So real time, you're going to give only the input. You're just going to say, I'm going to again give what would be the, in my case, what would be the amount that I spend on onions for a year. I'll give that alone. For that, it will take all the very similar features that it will extract, and it'll apply in the predictive model. It will use the algorithm, and it will use the same predictive. It will use the predictive model, use the algorithm, and then it will give the amount. Or for here, it will say, okay, they now I'm giving a house photo, and I'm giving the necessary input for the house. So it will extract the square footage, locality, and all that. It will extract those features, and it will run the similar correlation that has happened in the training data. And based off of that, it will give, okay, this house is estimated to this value because its square footage is this much, its locality is this much, and so on. So this is the supervised learning. So how different is this going to be in unsupervised learning? The only thing is you won't have the labels. I'll go to here, the labels that are being shown, right? The labels along with it. This won't be there for unsupervised learning. These are the corresponding output. This is the input, and the output for the corresponding input is given for the machine learning algorithm. But in unsupervised learning, you won't have that corresponding output. Rather, you will extract the features, and then you will probably group it into, okay, this is very similar to this group of data. This is similar to that group of, you basically cluster the given data to the closest, closest data that you already have. This is where unsupervised learning is used. So now we are going to see four major popular algorithms that are used in supervised learning: linear regression, decision tree, logistic regression, and naive Bayes algorithm. So linear regression. What is linear? When you say linear, or when you say linear line, right? What is the equation of line? Hope you all are very good at maths. So that is what we are going to use. The equation for line, y is equal to ax plus b. So that is what we are going to use. So here we are going to use that kind of algorithm to predict the value of house. So for example, I've given you a small house which is priced at 5 lakh rupees, and there is a big house that is priced at 50 lakhs rupees. So and then I have a medium house which is neither not this small as the first picture nor as big as it's neither small as the first house nor big as the second house. So it's somewhere in between. So what would be the price of this? So with your human eye, you would definitely predict it. If the human eye, you would definitely predict the price to be around, probably 25 to 35 lakhs. But how are you doing that? Okay, this is a very small house, this is a big house. So this is somewhere in between it. So the price also should be somewhere in between. So basically, how will you find it in a real-time data is basically you will plot the houses. So X here being the square footage and Y being the actual price of the house. So you are given the x value and you are given the y value. Okay, that is what we call supervised learning. That is, the desired output has been given for the input. So for every x value, for every square footage of the house, you have the price. You have, we saw two houses there for 5 lakhs and 50 lakhs. Similarly, you have so much houses. So you'll put a graph and you'll plot all the data. Now you have so much data. What is your next step? The next step is to based off of this, you're going to predict the new house. If any other house comes in the market, you should now be able to estimate its price. So how are we going to do it? So we'll see that. So once your plotting is done, your next job is to draw a line that is very close to all the existing data that's in the plot. So how are you going to do that? You're making sure you're going to draw a line that is very close to all these lines. So how will you do? For example, you do a line here. We'll say that you draw a line here. What happens? Okay, what happens? Now you'll calculate the distance from all the existing parts to that particular line. You draw a vertical line to it, it will be very high. So now you'll drop the line down, and then you will iterate it again and again. At some point, you will be landing up in this particular line. So for that line equation will be y is equal to wx plus e. What is that? E represents the noise or the error. Basically that should be really little. For all the possible dots that you have plotted in the graph, this e should be really little. That's when you are having a good line. So once you have a line that is ready, now a new house is coming. For example, a house that is, so for example, this is 1000 square feet and this is 10,000 square feet. Now you have a house with some 3000 square feet. So your dot will be somewhere here. So the estimated price will come here somewhat above here. So thus is how. So basically our observed values are the coefficients of x, and y value are the ones that we are going to predict. So based on this, we are going to predict the once our system is trained with the existing data. After our training, our computer will be able to come up with this particular line. Once this line is ready, if we have any x value, we just have to make sure to draw a vertical line to this slope, and then you will get the corresponding y coordinate which will be the predicted value. So what will be our goal? Main goal here is to minimize the error. What is the minimizing the error? Minimizing the distance between these minimizing the distance between these points to this line. Okay, so what is the next thing that I should be worried about is, why should I consider only the square footage for the home? Well, locality plays an important. 1000 square feet home in Tirunelveli would be priced different from 1000 square feet home that is in Chennai. So locality does play an important role. Yes. So what will locality be? Locality will be another dimension, like x, and there will be another z factor. So x and z will be your input and y will be your output. So this would still be the case. So can you not use why do you have to stop with locality and square footage alone? Why can't we use how old the building is? That's a good factor. What is the situation of the water in the place? Very good feature to consider to price a house. And are there any nearby hospitals? Are there nearby school? How good it is? How safe the area is? So there are so many properties that could estimate or improve or decrease the value of the house. So which means what, you will have so much dimensions in this graph. So what does it all end up to? If you have, for example, for predicting the house, you're going to have 1000 dimensions. It's going to pull down the time that you are taking to estimate the house, because it's for every single point you have to calculate all the dimensions. You have to work with all the dimensions, and so all dimensions means it's so many values. The data is humongous. So that's where there is a new term called dimensionality reduction in machine learning that is very popular. Like, what are the features that you have to really consider to keep the price of the house? For example, I cannot sit and say, okay, I'll give you the accurate. If I'm going to work with 1000 features, I'm definitely going to predict the output correct, but it's going to take hell a lot of time. So time is of essence here. So you have to trade between, okay, I'll take the most prominent 5 features and work with them to do the prediction, so that I have a reasonable time to get the output. So, so my latency time will be really less when I work with less number of dimensions. But that doesn't mean that you have to take the, for example, I remove the dimension of the square footage, which is very important, but the locality of square footage is very important. So you should know which dimensions that you are not going to use. So you're going to make sure you're going to understand the system or understand the data to prioritize your features and then take the top ones to predict. So the next use case, or this is how the linear regression works. So basically, when you go to RStudio and all, you have real packages that is already doing this algorithm for you. You just have to download the correct data set and run it. Run it against it. You will be able to see it will, these days RStudio is very wonderful because it can plot the data. It can visually show you the output like this. It is very easy. So this is the theoretical background behind how linear regression works. The next one use case is I'm going to say a use case where I want to detect spam mails. So how do you usually detect spam mails? How do you say a mail is spam basically? What you'll do is you will see for the words like, you have won a prize money, you have congratulations, you have won a lottery. All these mails are spam. Sometimes it will say like, you're qualified for availing this 5 lakh rupees or something. I'm going to give you a cheap iPad, I'm going to give you some iPad on cheap. So basically, you have thousands of emails, or you have a list of spam mails with you that are spam. You have a humongous list of emails that are spam to you. So what you do, you check, run through the emails, inspect each of the emails and find there are some words that are prominently sitting in each of these emails. So based on that, next time when an email comes saying you have won a prize money, 80% chance that is going to be a spam email. So that is a technique, where you detect spam mail using uh, historical spam emails, like, in history how the spam emails have come. Like they might not have a title, they'll have some weird spelling mistakes, so all that are indications of trouble. So based on that, you have a probability, like, if for example you have a email that doesn't have a title, that tells you have won a prize money, and it also tells some cheap, it has some spelling mistake. If all these are there, then 100% there's a chance that it is a spam. But sometimes some genuine emails will be there. Sometimes there will be a genuine email where you miss the title. So that does, just because you're missing the title, that doesn't mean it's a spam email. So you'll factor in all and give the probability for everything, and then you'll come up saying that uh, you'll tell, like, what is the probability of the word cheap coming, and it is 80% of the mails that has got cheap is 80% it's chance that it's a spam. So these kind of this is how you detect. So this probability usage is nothing but called the naive Bayes classifier. You have seen this naive Bayes Bayes theorem is one of the very popular theorem that you used in your probability, max probability. Bayes theorem is one of the very popular thing. How will you find which machine has produced the fault and all that? So the total probability and the probability of that particular machine producing the effect, all this calculation comes, very similar calculations are used to predict something that is spam, or predict something that is wrong, using the Bayes algorithm. So we'll go to so we have seen two nice algorithms. So now we are going to go to the third one. What is third one? The decision tree. Decision tree is one very popular algorithms. It was used in machine learning. When I say tree, it is very simple. Like, you draw a tree. A binary tree is popular in computer science. So you are going to spread out your data, and you're going to come up with a tree structure. You're going to you are given an event, and you're going to predict the category. Basically, it is used for classification. Naive Bayes and the linear regression, what we saw, was mainly used for prediction. Decision tree is used for classification. All your leaf nodes are going to be the category that you're going to get classified. One of those categories of being classified, and all your events are going to be your other parent nodes. So we're going to see an example which will make it so easy. For example, look at this table where you have some people who are so much interested in using certain apps. So uh, Some people are using Pokemon, some are using WhatsApp, and some are using this chat app, Snapdragon, I believe. I'm not sure. It's some chat application. Okay, so all these are. So how can you categorize it? For example, a new person is coming. What app would you recommend for them? Can you say all the men are going to use Pokemon? No. There is one man who's used a different chat application. Can you say all the women are going to use WhatsApp? No, there is one particular female that is using Pokemon. So what? How will you separate? So if you separate based on gender, you don't get a conclusive answer. But if you categorize with age, anybody who is less than 15 years, 15 or less than 15, then they are very much interested only in Pokemon. Only when they are greater than 15, then gender plays a role. All the females are so much interested in using WhatsApp than the other chat application. So how will you categorize this, or you can build a tree based on this? So what will be your prime event? Your age will be the first feature that you consider, whether it is greater than or equal to 20 or less than or equal to less than 20. When it is less than 20, you right away say Pokemon is the suggested application for you. When it is greater than or 20, then you again take another feature called gender and see if it is female or male. When it is female, it is WhatsApp, or when it is male, it's the this Snapdragon application, chat application for the men's. So this is basically an overview of how chat decision tree is. Well, I'm going to give you another example. Like you're going to use the decision tree to predict the categories for every new event. So you're going to use the for every event that is happening, you want to build the decision tree, a new event, and then once you come up. Once a decision tree is ready, a new event is happening, and based upon the new event, you will know which category it will automatically fall into. So consider a case where you want to play tennis outdoors, and you want to check if today is a good day to play tennis. How will you do that? You're going to check the humidity level. First is something that you can check first you will look outside and see whether it is sunny or overcast or rain. If it's overcast, okay, the climate is neither too hot nor too cold, nothing, it is perfect. I can right away go to play. If it is rainy, you can see if it is very light rain or wrong rain. If it's going to be if the rain is going to continue for long, you cannot. If it's going to be a weak rain, I think I can go outdoors and start. If it is sunny, then you have to further check the level of humidity, because if it's going to be very humid, then you can't play because you would be dehydrated. So how will you see that? So these are all this. Look outside the humidity, or all the attributes or the features that you will extract in a data, or that is what you will test in a particular. That is what you will look in a particular data. And the sunny, overcast, all this gray boxes are nothing but the values of the attributes. If the humidity is high or normal, looking outside it is sunny or overcast or rain. So those are the values of the attribute. And then the leaf nodes tell the classification. If the humidity is normal and it is sunny, yes, you can definitely go and play. If it is overcast, yes, you can go and play. If it is rainy, then you have to check for a few things. So this is the sample data. Like it will say it is sunny, the temperature is hot, the humidity is high, the wind is weak, and they play tennis. No, they don't play tennis. So these are all the historical sample data that you will go to a system. The system will now represent it using a decision tree. Once a tree is built with the sample data, then your system is ready. So now if you go look outside and say, oh my god, it's sunny and out, then the system will automatically say, no, don't go and play tennis. So basically, outlook is the attribute, values are sunny, overcast, and rain, and looking for humidity is the next attribute. If all the green boxes are going to be the categories, that will be one of the outcomes. So if it is overcast, you right away go and play. If it is raining, then you look for the wind. If it is humidity is high or normal, if it is high, don't play. Otherwise, play. If the wind is strong or weak, you. So this is one form. Could it be only this kind of comparisons, like strong, weak, high, normal? No, you can also have values for this high and normal, which we'll see in the next slide. But together, how do you represent this? How do you easily summarize to it? This is where our logical representation of the set theory comes, and OR operations. So when all will you play? When it is sunny and normal, or it is overcast, or it is rainy and weak. So these are all the conditions. Like see this, whenever you play is in sunny and normal, or overcast or rain and wave. So this is simple set theory. Told right, every algorithm has some max into it. Decision tree has set theory into it. Okay, so not only I said apart from sunny overcast, not only some attributes to directly compare, you can also have values. You can have threshold numerical values to decide the, so humidity, if you have a number for humidity rather than high and low, if you have the value for humidity, whenever it is greater than 75, you decide it is high humid, and you do. Similarly for wind, you will definitely have the miles per hour values. So the decision tree can be the attributes or the values for the attributes that you look for can be either a range of values, or it could be a particular numeric value also. So this is how decision tree works. Now we are getting to the last algorithm. For this, I'll take you a use case, like, you wanted to get into a university. You already have your 12th grade exams, and now you'll write an entrance exam, and you have that results also, and you're waiting whether you'll be accepted in the university. Assume this case. A student who has got 8 out of 10 in his real grade. For his 12th grade exam, he has got 8 on 10. And in the entrance exam, he has got 9 on 10. He is definitely accepted. You have another student who has got grades 4 on 10, and his entrance exam result was 3 on 10, and he was rejected. Now you have another student whose entrance result is 7 on 10 and his grade is 8 on 10. Will he be admitted? So this is the question. How are you going to find it? Of course, by using machine learning. So how are we going to do it? We are going to do the similar kind of plotting. This is very similar to linear regression. The only difference is what we'll see later. You should remember for what application did we use for linear regression. We predicted it, right? We predicted a value, but here in logistic regression and in decision tree we are classifying it. So our aim here is to classify whether the student will be admitted or not, yes or no. So it's one of the classification problems. You're going to use a similar linear regression to do a classification. That is called logistic regression. So what are we going to do? I'm going to plot all the historical values for some sample data where students were admitted and students were rejected. Okay, all the green dots are the history, where how many students with what grades and what entrance test values they were admitted, and the red ones are those that were rejected. So once you now have it, now you can still draw a slope that you drew in. You can still draw a slope that you do in linear regression that would divide the data almost accurately between the separation between red and green. How will you do that? Similarly, you will find the same gap. For every, there should be the separation that only when a slope that maximum divides the green ones in one side and the red ones in another side is almost a perfect slope. Will it do it properly? No, there will always be some exceptions, like there will be some particular reservation categories where some green dots might fall into the red category and some red dots will be there in the green category box. So now once you have this categorization, this is when your algorithm is ready. Now you're ready to accept the real-time data. Your student 3 is coming with his entrance result is 7 on 10 and grades are 7 on 10. So your x-axis is nothing but the entrance result, and the y-axis is nothing but your 12th examination grade. So you plot it, and this is where he falls. Now he's definitely in the green area. So now based on this, you can say that this student will definitely be accepted. So this is how prediction works. So this is where we end the this is where we are going to end the supervised algorithm. The next one is going to be unsupervised, or I'm going to give you an overview of unsupervised. We are not going to go into detail. Probably if we have another session in future, we look into it. Okay. So these are not only the limiter. There are so many other algorithms. There is one another interesting algorithm called SVM, support vector machine. It is very similar to linear regression, but it has got some soft kernel around it that accepts some errors and all losses, and so you can start googling about various supervised algorithm. You will start understanding better, because the concept is this: machine learning supervised algorithm is either going to be used for prediction or classification. Once you have that in mind, you can now read the problem statement or read the use cases based on that, and you will now be able to understand the problem better, or understand the machine learning algorithms better. So what is clustering? I'm just going to give you a nutshell overview, and then we're going to conclude the session. Clusters are nothing but group of people with some similarity. Like people who love badminton, people who love to eat, try different food. So there may be some common characters that you look into a group of data, and you will group those data. Why do we have to group like this? Because these days advertising or any kind of, like I'm developing an app, for example, I'm developing an app, a fitness app. So who do I have to advertise it for them to buy it? Is I have to find who are the people who are really interested in fitness or weight loss or something kind of that. So to know that, I have to browse and find people who are really interested in that area and group them together, and then I will do the advertisement to those group rather than to the whole wide audience, where half of them will not be interested in what I'm going to tell. Or for example, to understand what is the need of a what is the current need that the housewives are looking for, like, is there any particular gadget they are looking for, is there any, what are they searching for, or the new moms or the educationers or the people who wanted to train at home, what are they looking for, what are they looking for in handy. So that kind of exploratory analysis, this can be used. So basically cluster, this is again graph theory. What maths is directly related to graph theory, nodes and edges. So edges are nothing but a particular node or one particular data is related to the other data with some connection, with some similarity, and that edge will represent that similarity. How far and how close decides the closeness of the data. So this is all used in any PageRank computation tool. Clustering is mainly used in any, you all upload blogs. So once we upload it, the internet will classify this new coming blog is related to a food review. So this will have that, they will tag it to some food based on food. If any other search is coming based on food, this blog might be shown as a result because it is being tagged to that. So you have to cluster the given data to some particular category. So it's, again, this is a notebook definition. It's saying process of grouping a set of objects into a class of similar objects. So there are many algorithms. Flat algorithms. What is flat algorithm is, it will randomly initially partition. Say for example, I want I want 5 groups of people uh, interested in 5 subjects. So initially, what I do, whatever the classes, I'll immediately do 5 partitions. I'll randomly do. Then I'll go into each partition and I'll ask you, are you interested in maths? You'll say, no, I'm not interested. Then I'll ask you to go out. So I'll then inspect every element and I'll see if he's really belonging to that particular partition or he is belonging to a different partition. And then I'll move around the data and group it. So model-based clustering or K-means clustering are very, very smart examples of this flat algorithms. So what I'm doing, I'm randomly first partition and then refining it. I'm getting into the partition, looking at every data in the partition, and I'm refining it. If it doesn't belong, I'm moving it to a different place or some kind of that is happening. So hierarchical algorithms is, there are 2 types of hierarchical. There are 2 types, whether it is bottom up or top down. What is bottom up? I make sure every data is an individual cluster, and then I find next 2 data that are close and I bring it together. So and then I group them together into a big one umbrella. Top down is I divide them into 2 and then further 2 and further 2 and further 2 and go. So this is divisive based, and bottom up is agglomerative type of algorithms. So basically, this is what we are going to close the session with my final conclusion here. So what have we saw? What all these algorithms? What do they say? They are going to give you a different way of representing the data. The given data is represented in a way that the model can understand it better. You're extracting the correct features. You're giving the right values to the attributes, and you are representing the data in a much more understandable way for the computer to observe or understand the correlation between the features and the actual output. Once that is done, once you represent it, you evaluate. How do you evaluate? You use so many techniques. Precision recall, we've seen it in information technology. You will know information retrieval. Precision recall is used quite often. Posterior probability or the error margin I told, right? All those squared error or the coordinate geometry. That linear regression uses coordinate geometry, like it plots the plots between x and y axis, and then you find the distance between the slope and the particular point. How do you find that? There are so many Euclidean distance algorithm, coordinate geometry. How do you find the distance between 2 points? Root of x square minus y, x1 square, x1 minus x to the whole square plus y1 minus y to the whole square. The whole root of them is nothing but the Euclidean distance formula. There are so many formulas to find those kind of. You're evaluating the data. Basically, all that is evaluating the data to make sure your accuracy is improving your accuracy. So evaluating the data. Once evaluation is done, that's where you're optimized. So in a nutshell, machine learning in practice is basically once you understand a domain, you get prior knowledge, and then you identify a particular problem, and you see what are the existing data there. Once you have the data, you collect all the data, data integration, you select the necessary data, you clean up, you do all the necessary pre-processing, develop a learning model, and then you interpret your results. All this is called machine learning. So I motivate each one of you to, pick your own domain of interest, find the areas where machine learning can play a role in it, develop your own algorithms or initially use existing algorithms and apply to get the results what you want, and then you can refine and start developing your own algorithms. And you will this is a very one it's a wonderful area where you're all going to dive in, and you're going to be very much interested in seeing what the results are and what are the things that you can do in future, or what are the things that I can do once you get the result for one particular set of data in applying one algorithm. You will now compare, okay, how about I apply linear regression to the same, how about I apply decision tree to the same thing, what results do I get, which is more accurate, all those kind of research you can do. And you'll be you'll be really surprised to know how interested you're going to become once you dive into this topic. So with that, I'm concluding, and I once again thank my dear friend Dr. Gomati for having me give this opportunity to uh, for giving me this opportunity basically to share my knowledge on machine learning. And I don't know how I can clear your doubts, but if you can contact Dr. Gomati, I think she'll find out a way to send your questions to me, and I would definitely get back to you on that. And we'll see. Hopefully, we'll meet up in another session. And I wish each one of you all the very best for your own futures. Give the necessary hard work, put your heart and soul into it, focus on what you're doing. Success is definitely on your way. And thank you all once again. Vanakkam.
Thank you, ma'am, for the wonderful and informative speech. Hope the participants have gathered the insights about an introduction to machine learning. Now, Professor Deslin will give the vote of thanks.
It's my immense pleasure to take this opportunity to offer the vote of thanks. First of all, I want to thank our Lord Jesus Christ for making this program a grand success. Next, I want to thank our resource person, Mrs. Mabel Finney, for spending her valuable time and her knowledge even in her busy schedule. Next, I want to thank all the participants of this program. Without you, there is no success of this program. Hope this program surely help you to increase your knowledge. Finally, I want to thank our management, our HOD ma'am, and all the people who work for the welfare of this program. Thank you all. Thank you once again.